What up, what up, what up? We back on the channel today with another banger. Today, I'll go over all my takeaways for every single team throughout the NFL season so far. So it's only been 4 weeks, I know, but I'll just go over all my takeaways. I'll start off with the Arizona Cardinals, the first team, and then we'll end it off with the Washington Commanders. So without further ado, let's get it. All right, let's start off with the Arizona Cardinals. My first takeaway is that Marvin Harrison has looked really good. And it took him a couple weeks to get going, but he's finally arrived. He looks like a great wide receiver, and I'm sure he has many more years to come where he's going to be an elite wide receiver. So he's looked great so far. Kyler Murray has looked really solid. Um, the defense, though, really needs to be a lot better. Especially last week, they could not stop the Commanders at all. So if this team really wants to compete for a playoff spot, the defense really needs to step up because I feel like the offense is doing well enough to win. It's just the defense just isn't there right now. Another thing is that the offense does need to limit the turnovers because I feel like there's been way too many of them for them to have a good shot at winning games. But those are my takeaways for the Cardinals. Now on to the Atlanta Falcons. Kirk Cousins has been clutch, and this is not really seen in the counting numbers because like the counting numbers aren't really there. He's been solid if you just look at the box score, but he definitely can be better when it comes to like getting the ball to his weapons, especially like Bijan, Kyle Pitts, and Drake London. He's definitely been a lot better at that recently, more so than the start of the year. But I will say, Darnell Mooney's been really, really good for the Falcons. So it's really cool to see his like rise and see how he's like essentially rebounded from that very bad year he had last year. So the Falcons' offense looks really good. This team should be a playoff team, and I think they will be. Now on to the Baltimore Ravens. They've definitely rebounded after like that 0-2 start. Derrick Henry is back, the king. He's back after two amazing games in the past 2 weeks. The Ravens, of course, are a contender. Now on to the Bills. The Bills are also another contender, but I will say their run defense was exposed last week by the Baltimore Ravens. And yeah, it might just be because Derrick Henry's a freak and he's a monster, but I also think this might expose a problem with their defense. So we'll have to wait and see if their rush defense can get better throughout the year. But Josh Allen is definitely the MVP conversation. And one thing that is pretty interesting to see is that without Stephon Diggs, they still have been doing really well. So like as of now, it's seemed like no Stephon has led to no problems. Because in his absence, you've had people like Khalil Shakir has stepped up a lot. He's been a really great target for Josh Allen. Dalton Kincaid, their tight end's been a great target. Keon Coleman, the rookie's been getting a lot of targets. So yeah, it's not looked terrible for them, but they need to shore up their issues on the in terms of the rush defense. Now on to the Panthers. I will say it's really tough seeing Bryce Young. Or I guess when we saw him, it was tough seeing Bryce Young struggling that much. He was just lacking all the confidence. Now Andy Dalton's in, and he's looked great so far. So hopefully, for Bryce's career's sake, I hope Andy Dalton plays for the rest of the year, and Bryce just learns under him and kind of gains the confidence back. Because he was playing very scared out there when he was on the field, and that just doesn't work when you're a quarterback. So I hope becomes a lot better. I hope he's a better quarterback, and I really hope him sitting this year will prepare him for the future and make him the talent that he was supposed to be when he was drafted first overall. Along with this, Deontay Johnson's finally looking like the wide receiver one that he is. It was slow. Um, it was a very slow start actually with Bryce Young at QB, but now the Andy Dalton's the quarterback. Deontay's getting fed the ball and he's been cooking. Now on to the Chicago Bears. Caleb has struggled, but he's also shown a lot of flashes, and I think that's what we should expect from a rookie quarterback. Um, the Bears are not a perfect team by any stretch. The offensive line is struggling. Now Caleb has contributed to a couple of those sacks, but still, the O line's been struggling. But I will say one thing that Caleb should do is Um, throw the ball a little quicker. Get the ball out sooner so you don't have to struggle behind that O line. And get the ball to your like weapons like DJ Moore, Cole Kmet. He's missed far too many throws to his top targets, so he definitely needs to get that under wraps. The defense, I will say, has looked really good so far in these first 4 weeks. A very underrated part of the team for sure, and they're finally, I feel like, getting their flowers now that they're doing really well recently. So the defense has looked great. The offense should eventually reach their potential. I feel like. I think it's going to take some time for Caleb to get in the groove, but I think pretty soon enough, the Bears could be a real contender. Now on to the Bengals. Essentially the opposite of a contender right now. The defense looks horrible. The offense looks solid, but it's been a horrible start for this team. 1-3 is not where they want it to be after 4 weeks, but maybe it's just another slow start by the Bengals and they pick it up by the end of the year. But it's not really looking like that, to be honest, because the offense has been definitely good, but the defense has been Swiss cheese essentially. They have not been good at all. So the Bengals are looking rough. Another team that somehow looks worse than the Bengals is the Cleveland Browns. Deshaun Watson is atrocious. He might be a bottom three quarterback in the NFL, and that says a lot considering there's not like a lot of like bad QBs. Deshaun's one of the few ones that are really bad. The defense also has been kind of iffy because they let up a bunch of rushing yards to the Raiders' rush attack, which couldn't really run the which couldn't really run the ball before. Um, so yeah, it's looking like it's gonna be a bad year for the Browns, and there's not really much solace because they're paying Deshaun Watson all that money. They're essentially tied up to a bunch of veterans. They really need to win now, but it's looking like it's not going to be good for them. Now on to the Cowboys. Now the Cowboys have been a weird team so far. They've had no rush attack. The pass attack has been good because Dak and CD have looked good. But their lack of a run game is really going to bite them. And it has already started to kind of bite them, but I feel like it's going to get worse and worse throughout the year as they play better teams and better defenses. Um, and along with that, speaking of defense, the Cowboys' defense needs to be a lot better. They have not been good at all so far. And they definitely need a rebound if the Cowboys want to be a contender like they're supposed to be. Now on to the Broncos. The defense looks great. They've had really good showings against the offenses they faced. Bo Nix has looked like a solid game manager so far. Um, you can definitely see the potential to be an elite quarterback is there. Okay, I won't say elite, but like there is potential for Bo to be a really good QB. But so far he's just kind of been decent at that. So the Broncos might actually be a solid team. They're right now 2-2, second in the AFC West, or I guess tied for second with all the other three teams. But they're not winning the division. We all know that the Chiefs are winning the division, but they could be a sneaky good team. I guess we'll just wait and find out. But onto the Lions. Jared Goff has rebounded tremendously. He's looking pretty bad the first couple weeks, but he's played really well the past 2 weeks. The rest of the offense has looked great. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams have looked good. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery are a fantastic running back duo. They've both been great. So this team has all the tools, I would say, to make another deep run in the playoffs. Now onto the Packers, the Lions' big rivals. Jordan Love is back, which is great for them because Malik Willis did good with the Packers, but again, he was limited. Now they have their star QB back. And he looked kind of rusty in that game last week against the Vikings. He was up and down. He had a lot of picks, but he also had a lot of touchdowns. But I think the more he plays, the less rusty he's going to be, and the more of the star he's going to be. So I think the Packers should be fine. The defense was great up until last week. They kind of got exposed against the Vikings, but they did show a lot of promise in that second half. They really turned it up and kind of made it closer. So the Packers should be fine. The Texans, their offense just isn't as elite as we all expected it to be. It's still a good offense, but we were expecting they'd score like 40 points a game or 30 points a game, and that's just not been happening. They're still a very solid team. They have that clutch gene or that it factor. Essentially, all their wins have been by one possession. So whenever it's close, they always figure out a way to win. CJ Stroud has looked great. Nico Collins has looked like a top three, top five wide receiver so far. So the Texans will be fine. They'll be a good team. Now to the Colts. Anthony Richardson has been up and down. He's had a lot of picks and a lot of turnovers, but he's also showed hella potential and hella promise, especially that one like 70-yard bomb that he threw in that first week off his back foot. The potential is clearly there, but like I said before the start of the season, we just need to see if he'll put it all together and keep the ball out of harm's way, which I don't know if he will do, but hoping he does because he's a great talent. The defense has looked very solid so far too. One thing I will note is that Michael Pittman has been really uninvolved so far in the offense up until last week. So one thing they need to do is they need to get him the ball, feed him the ball. He is their wide receiver one, and he needs to be fed the ball. So that's one thing they needed to work on. Now on to the Jags. The Jags have been terrible. Only team that's 0-4 right now with a QB that's being paid, I think, the highest salary in NFL history. So Trevor Lawrence has definitely not been worth that contract so far. He needs to play like the generational QB that he was drafted to be. So he definitely needs to step up his game. But I will say the team outside of him is not like perfect either. The offensive line has been struggling. The defense has been struggling. Essentially, the entire team has been struggling. And I feel like they really needed that win last week against the Texans, but they just couldn't close it out when they needed to. One thing that has been good for them, though, is Brian Thomas has been great so far. He's been a really good weapon for Trevor Lawrence, and he's really looking like their wide receiver one. Obviously, they lost Calvin Ridley in the offseason, so it was going to be like a question mark as to who would replace him. And so far, it's definitely been Brian Thomas. So it's nice to see the rookie really pop off for them. Now on to the Chiefs. The Chiefs somehow are 4-0. They've not looked good. They've looked pretty bad in every game, but they've been finding ways to win. So it's all that matters, I guess, Specifically, Mahomes has been pretty mediocre at best. Like, he hasn't really played like his usual self, which is really weird because, Mahomes is a great player, obviously the best QB in the NFL, but he hasn't played like that in this like first 4 games. So I don't know. We'll see if this continues. It's definitely gonna be tough losing Rashee Rice last game, and you already didn't have Hollywood Brown for the whole like regular season, so it's gonna be tough for that offense. But the defense has been great. They've been finding ways to win ugly, but they have won, so it's all that matters. Now onto the Raiders. The Raiders are a really interesting team. I'd say they're the most random team in the league right now. They've won games against like better teams, but have somehow lost to like teams I would consider worse than them. It's a really weird scenario for them to be in, but they're 2-2, so I guess they're still in the playoff hunt. I don't expect that they will make the playoffs. Gardner Minshew's not that franchise QB to help them out like that. Along with the fact that they're actively shopping Devontae Adams right now, so I don't know why they're doing that, but I'm assuming it's probably because they just want to get off of his contract and have a younger team, which isn't bad. It's not a bad idea. It's just that like I feel like they gave up a lot and gave him a massive like contract a couple years ago, so like it's not really looking that good. But we'll see if Devontae gets traded soon. I think he will, but this team's just mid at best, I'd say. Now on to the Chargers. The Chargers definitely need Justin Herbert to be healthy. That's the big factor, the big piece of this offense. He needs to be healthy. Because their backup QBs, Taylor Heineke, I'm pretty sure, he's not a franchise QB, So they definitely need a healthy Herbert to be successful and possibly make the playoffs. The rush attack and rush game has been really good. J.K. Dobbins looks like his old self pre-injury. Joe Alt was a fantastic pick in the draft, looking back on it, because he's been great so far, aside from like blocking T.J. Watt, but not many people look great against T.J. Watt. I will say one thing that has stood out to me is there's been no true wide receiver one so far. Lad McConkey's been really been getting better the past couple of weeks, but He's still not the wide receiver one yet. Quentin Johnston has been doing solid, but I don't think he's the true wide receiver one. So I think we'll have to see who steps up and becomes that wide receiver one for them for Justin Herbert. I think it's going to be Ladd McConkey. I think Quentin Johnston's a great wide receiver two to have. He's a great red zone threat, but I think McConkey's just going to be the go-to guy for like the rest of the season. On to the other LA team in the Rams. This team has been decimated with injuries. It's insane. They've lost their two-star wide receivers in Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. They definitely need them back because that offense is looking dreadful right now. The O-line needs to better protect Matthew Stafford. He was getting hammered around in that Bears game. And even in the 49ers game, Kyren Williams needs to be better. So, like, the offense needs to be a lot better. The defense, I'd say, has been playing well enough to win. But this team's just been struggling with injuries. So, they need everyone to get back healthy. On to the Dolphins. Speaking of injuries, Tua needs to be back on this team. He needs to play for the Dolphins to have a chance to win. Because Skylar Thompson or Tyler Huntley are not it. They're not the option. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle have both been limited because of the fact that they don't really have a competent QB right now. So this team, for the sake of winning, needs Tua to be back. But me personally, I think Tua should probably think about retiring. Because this is an ongoing thing with him, is that he's been getting concussed a lot, especially in these past couple of years. And the more hits he takes to the head, the more concussions he gets, the worse it's going to be for his own health. So I think for his, like, the sake of his health, I think he should step away. He said he's not, but I don't know. I feel like he should change his decision. I think that he should step away from football by the end of this year to at least preserve his, like, brain and health. But I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully, when he comes back, or if he comes back, he is better at sliding and avoiding those hits. So he can be the healthy, great QB that he is when he's healthy, you know? But aside from that, they also just lost Jalen Phillips for the year. The news came out just today or yesterday. So that's a massive loss for this defense that was already kind of reeling because of the fact that the offense can't do anything. So this defense is looking worse and worse. And it's looking like this is going to be a pretty bad year for the Dolphins. Now on to the Vikings. The Vikings have been the biggest surprise in the NFL so far. Easily. Not even a question. Sam Darnold looks like an MVP, and he's firmly in the MVP race through 4 games. Now, I don't know if he's going to continue that for the rest of the year. I feel like he's going to fall off a little bit, and there's going to be a drop-off, but I don't know. Maybe Sam Darnold is legit, and he just wasn't in the right situation until now. But Jordan Addison's finally back from injury, and he looked great last week, so that's massive for that offense. Justin Jefferson has looked incredible, and he's easily the best wide receiver in the league. And I think he's kind of showing everyone that after he missed a lot of games last year, he's showing everyone that he's back to claim his throne as the best wide receiver. But the Vikings look great. The defenses look great so far as well, aside from like the second half of last week. But this team might actually be legit, and they might be contenders. Now on to the Pats, who are definitely not contenders. That offense is dreadful. The defense has not been looking great either. The team is horrible. Jacoby Brissett should not be starting. Start Drake May. You drafted him second overall for a reason. I understand giving him some time to sit and learn behind a veteran, but at this point, I think it's better for his growth if he's actually out there playing so he can get some like reps in. This season is a lost year already. You're not winning anything. There's no point in keeping your franchise QB on the bench for no reason. At least that's what I think, but I don't know. The Pats are horrible. Now on to the Saints. The Saints looked really good the first 2 weeks. Them along with the Vikings were the 2 surprise teams in the league. But then they've kind of fallen back to earth these past 2 games. The offense hasn't looked as good. They definitely need to pick it up. Derek Carr needs to be better. He's looking great in those first 2 weeks, but he's just not looked as good these past 2 weeks. The offense definitely needs to be a lot better. Alvin Kamara has looked incredible, though. He's been playing really well. A great running back, a great option in the pass game as well for Derek Carr. So Kamara's looked great. It's just the rest of the offense needs to pick it up, specifically Derek Carr and those wide receivers. On to the Giants. Now, Malik Neighbors is incredible. I would say so far, Malik Neighbors has been a lot better than Marvin Harrison. And this is not a knock to Marvin Harrison because he's been good, but Malik Neighbors is playing like a top 5, 10 wide receiver in the league right now. He's been incredible. Daniel Jones, though, is not it. I've been saying this for a while. I mean, everyone knows this too. Like, Daniel Jones was never going to be the franchise QB. He had one good year with Brian Daboll, and everyone thought he was amazing and the savior, but he's not that good of a quarterback. They should have moved on from him, but instead they gave him a massive contract. Now they're kind of stuck with him right now. I expect them to draft a QB this draft, but I don't know. I guess we'll see what they do, but he's not their franchise QB. Um, and I will say the defense, though, has looked very solid so far. They look good. Brian Burns has been good. Um, Dexter Lawrence obviously is amazing. So the team's looked very solid so far. A very surprising start for them, I'd say. I expected them to be one of the worst teams in the league, but Malik Neighbors has really carried that offense. And the defense has looked good. So the team's solid. Another team that's been solid but like disappointing is the New York Jets. 2-2 is not a bad place to be, but the offense hasn't really looked all that. Brees Hall has been super disappointing, and I know it's like only been 4 games, but he's been really bad so far, and he might be usurped by Braylon Allen soon, who's been looking really good behind the offensive line. Aaron Rodgers hasn't looked great either. He's not been bad, but he hasn't been like elite like we expect him to be. So, I mean, personally, I didn't expect him to be elite. I just expect him to be like decent, which is about where he is right now. But he definitely needs to target Garrett Wilson a lot more. Feed Garrett Wilson the ball, like the wide receiver one that he's supposed to be. I don't know why he's not, but they just got to feed him. Now on to the Eagles. It's a pretty disappointing start. Obviously, they've lost Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown for the past couple weeks, so the injuries aren't helping. But the defense specifically, I think, needs to be better. They brought in Vic Fangio. I thought they'd be really good this year. They've not been bad, but they have been pretty disappointing, especially in like clutch situations. They essentially let Kirk Cousins walk all over them in a game they should have won against the Falcons. They kind of got exposed by the Bucks last week, so I don't know. Along with that, Jalen Hurts has looked mid at best. When he's on, he looks good, but then for some reason he decides to just throw a pick or like turn the ball over in random bad situations. Situations where you just cannot turn it over, he turns it over. So he needs to get better at that. But they were my preseason pick to win the Super Bowl. They definitely have not looked like that so far, but they haven't been terrible either. So they can still definitely pick it up. Now on to my team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. The defense has looked incredible up until last week. They got exposed by Joe Flacco. I don't think this is going to carry over. I think it's more so a thing of them not expecting to play Flacco because they were game planning for Anthony Richardson, but then he got hurt. I think it's more so that, but I will say it was kind of concerning to see Flacco just like light up the defense. So got to make sure the pass defense is good. Another thing we need to do is we need to make sure our run game has to be like good. It has to be competent because it's not been established at all yet. Najee's been struggling. Jalen Warren's been hurt. Cordell Patterson has been decent, but we definitely need to get better in the trenches and create holes for our running backs to go through. Another thing is we need to let Justin Fields air it out more. We saw last week when we were down big, Justin Fields brought us back into that game with his arm. So I feel like we need to just like let him loose, let him cook, But we have a really good quarterback. I see the potential there. He's a great dual threat. Just let him air it out more, Use him to his best capabilities. But yeah, the team's been very solid so far, and I'm excited to see how they respond to the rest of the schedule and the rest of the year. On to the 49ers. It's been a disappointing start for them. They are 2-2, so it's not like horrendous. It's not like the Bengals being 1-3 or the Browns being 1-3, but we all expected more out of this team. The injuries have been kind of piling up recently. Kittle was out for a little bit. Deebo Samuel's been out. CMC's been out. So the injuries aren't helping at all either. But man, oh man, Brandon Ayuk looks lost. He's not looked like the star wide receiver that he was last year at all. I don't know what it is, but he definitely needs to rebound. Brock Purdy's looked really good so far, though. I think he's leading the league in passing yards as of now. He's looked great, but the rest of that offense needs to catch up. Specifically, Brandon Ayuk. But I think once they're fully healthy, this team will realize its potential and be one of the top teams in the NFC and like the league, like they're supposed to be. But yeah, on to the Seahawks. They've looked great so far. The offense has looked really good. Geno Smith and DK Metcalf have had a great connection. Kenneth Walker has been cooking in the games that he's been healthy in. So the offense looks good. JSN looks good. The defense is not too bad either. You know, it's been very solid. Mike McDonald, their head coach, is a defensive, or at least was a defensive coordinator, so it makes sense. He's a defensive-oriented guy. The defenses look great, except for last game against the Lions. But then again, the Lions' offense is just incredible. So one thing I will say is they have a very tough schedule the rest of the year, so we'll have to see if they'll back it up and continue winning. But it's going to be tough, but this team could have what it takes to be a good team and like a potential like playoff team or even like a contender in the NFC. Now on to the Bucks. Baker has looked incredible so far. He's been an MVP candidate type of player through these first 4 weeks. It's been a great start for the offense. The defense is putting it together as well. They absolutely dominated the Eagles last week on both sides of the ball. So this team should be good. I don't know why we were doubting the Bucks again. They have shown and proven that they are a very competent, good team. So they will probably be a playoff team again and could be a Super Bowl contender by chance, you know? But we'll see. On to the Titans, who will not be Super Bowl contenders because Will Levis is a turnover machine. Like, each game, I think it can't get worse, but somehow it does. He finds ways to turn the ball over that I didn't expect. Could be done by a starting quarterback for an NFL team, you know? Plays like he's a freshman out there, but I don't know. You can see the potential. The potential is clearly there. He makes some great throws that wow you, but then he also makes so many boneheaded decisions that it's just impossible to think he's going to be a star quarterback, you know? But I don't know. I hope he puts it together, but it just hasn't been looking good so far. One thing that has looked pretty solid for them is their rush attack. Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears have been really solid. The offensive lines looked all right. The defense looked pretty good for the first couple weeks. Not so much the past couple weeks, but the defense hasn't been bad. I think it's just more so an issue of the offense. One thing I will say is they definitely need to give DeAndre Hopkins the ball more because they haven't really been able to feed him like the wide receiver one he's supposed to be. So they definitely need to feed him and also Calvin Ridley the ball more. Levis has to just get it to his playmakers and let them do the rest, you know? He's been playing way too much hero ball, I feel. On to the Commanders. Jaden Daniels is, as of now, the MVP. And I know it's early. And I know he's a rookie. But as of right now, he has the Commanders as one of the top teams in the NFC, record-wise. He's been an incredible dual threat as he's passed the ball brilliantly. And he even has the highest completion percentage of any player in league history through the first 4 games of any season. It's incredible. He's been pinpoint accurate. It's not just checkdowns. He's aired it out, intermediate passes. Everything's just on point for him. He's only had 1 pick, and he has a lot of touchdowns, especially through the ground. I know he only has 3 passing touchdowns, but those numbers are going to improve. And that, along with his rushing, I think makes him the MVP frontrunner right now. What I will say, though, is the team definitely needs to be like one of the best teams in the league by the end of the year for him to win it. I don't expect that to happen. I think they'll fall back down to earth. But if they are one of the best teams in the NFC or league, he should win it. At bare minimum, I think it's going to be a good race between him and Malik Neighbors for the Offensive Rookie of the Year because both have been incredible so far. And along with that, the rush attack has been really good too. Brian Robinson has looked very solid. Obviously, Jaden Daniels has provided a lot on the ground, but the team's looked really good. And the defense has looked pretty bad. Despite the fact that the offenses look great, the defenses look pretty bad. But they have played well at times. They played well last week against the Cardinals, so maybe they'll pick it up. And I expect them to because Dan Quinn's their coach, so I think the defense should piece it together by the end of the year. But I think this team will like fall back to earth a little bit. That's all we have for today. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Let me know down below what you guys think. Do you think I'm being too high on some teams? Do you think I'm too low on some teams? Whatever it is, just let me know. But again, that's all we have for today. And until next time.